We're very grateful to welcome back Michael Pinkerton. He's an associate marriage family therapist, as well as the Living Skills Programs Director at Integrated Community Services in Marin County. We very much appreciate if you've been to others in our Cultivating Independence series that Michael has done. We very much appreciate his straightforward, no-nonsense, easily understood delivery of often somewhat confusing independent living information, as well as his willingness to help our community. So Michael, thanks for sharing your time and your thoughts with us today, and please take it away.
Thank you, Alyssa. Today, I want to talk about increasing independence through services and talk a bit about a service called Tailored Day Services. So first, I just wanted to give a general summary of what this presentation will cover. So we'll start with a summary of my background, then just go through some landmarks of becoming independent. Then I'm going to talk about the landscape of job-related services and supports. And this is it's not fully comprehensive. There are some new options, or some college living experience programs, and some paid internship opportunities that I have heard about, but I don't know a lot about. So those things are not included. But I'll be talking about the main services that I've come into contact with, which are, currently the services that most people end up using. I'll talk specifically about regional center options, which include day programs with a vocational component and individualized day programs. And I'll talk about Department of Rehabilitation programs, which include work training, job development, and job coaching. So the way that I've prepared the presentation sort of has to do with my own kind of chronological experience. So basically, I'll talk about the options that were typically most available and used before we started using this tailored day services vendorization. And that Tailored Day Services has been around for a while, but it wasn't started in Marin until quite recently. So I'll talk about kind of without Tailored Day Services in the picture, the regional center options, and the Department of Rehabilitation programs. I'll talk about people who don't fit well with these options, and then I'll go into Tailored Day Services, a description of some of the strengths and weaknesses of TDS programs, and I'll give some examples of situations in which TDS has been provided at my agency, ICS, and I'll give a couple examples of parts of TDS plans, and then just a summary, and then I think there will be a poll, and then we'll do the Q&A. Okay, so about me. I studied psychology at Oberlin College and graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in 1998. I ended up getting interested in alternative medicine and came out here to California to go to a chiropractic school where I graduated in 2005. But I ended up doing that part-time and working a lot in human services as my main interest kind of continued to be psychology. I worked at Lifehouse 2006 to 2013 as a supported living manager and was part of the senior management team there. Starting in 2011, I became the independent living skills coordinator at ICS in 2013 and the living skills director in 2016. And I decided I wanted to further my career in psychology, and I got a master's in arts in marriage and family therapy from North Central University in 2019. So currently, I'm the Living Skills Director at Integrated Community Services in San Rafael, and I'm also currently a registered Associate Marriage and Family Therapist at Seeds of Awareness in Petaluma. And an Associate Marriage and Family Therapist is someone who has their master's degree but is not yet licensed. And so I work under the supervision of a licensed therapist. Okay, so When we think about our children and we think about, them growing in their independence, it's important to look back at our own lives and what were some of the landmarks of ourselves becoming independent. So, if we think back to our own lives, there were things like your first trip to the mall without your parents, your first job, your first romantic relationship, going to college, your first apartment, of course, your first bills and having those responsibilities as well. And, what are some of the key features of these situations? So they are being on your own, going out of your parents' kind of orbit, being able to build confidence in steps over many years, sometimes engaging in activities that are against your parents' wishes. That is an important part of building some independence. And sometimes suffering the consequences of your decisions, a bad breakup sometimes, or losing a job, or spending money poorly. And actually having to face some real difficulties in a variety of realms. And, if you have a child with a disability, there are supports that can help your child achieve some of these milestones in some form. And there are life skill supports, and I've talked about those before. And today I'm going to talk more about what's called pre-vocational supports, which are supports that would prepare someone for working, and then a little bit on vocational supports, which are supports provided for someone once they start working. So this presentation is going to be about kind of prepping for a first job and for employment in general. Now, I just wanted to do a few slides to kind of orient everyone to what, in my experience, is helpful when thinking about your child's future. So, typically functioning in a family, there's not often a lot of intentionality. We're just trying to make it through the day. And there can be so many factors, and we can be pulled in so many directions. Additionally, in families, you're together with your family every day, and it's difficult to maintain kind of long-term goals or this overall look. But especially with children with disabilities, in areas like future living arrangements and future employment, it can be very helpful to be intentional and to try to have an overarching picture of where it's best to focus and what are some options and opportunities. And to be able to do that effectively, it is important to to come to terms about your child's future. And what I mean by that, and I think this is important for all parents, whether they have children with disabilities or not, but having a realistic sense of your child's abilities, having a realistic sense of the gains your child might make in terms of abilities, and then having a realistic sense of what is out there in terms of supported living and living supports. And what this presentation is about is having a realistic sense of what is out there in terms of eventual employment and those types of supports. So when in this process of thinking about these things and trying to move your child towards independence, again, it may require a strong intention, and it's often a little different between children or individuals who strive for independence and want to become independent, and those who resist independence and just want to stay at home and really have no inkling or idea of wanting to ever move, kind of grow out of the family's orbit. So for children who strive for independence, it's important to develop a plan to make sure that they are as ready as possible for becoming more independent, to try to sustain their motivation while adding in realistic expectations. And what I mean by that is, sometimes if you have someone who really wants to become independent strongly, you try to dampen their excitement because you think, oh my gosh, this is going to be a disaster. But that motivation is a very healthy motivation, and it's good. So you want to try and figure out how to not dampen that while at the same time, helping them be realistic. It's good to determine what situation they could safely move into, and then to give some thoughts to what their vocational, so job-related strengths and weaknesses are, and to try to think of jobs or volunteer opportunities that might be a good starting place for them to start to learn some job-related skills. For children who resist the idea of increased independence, developing a plan to get them to be interested in gaining living and working skills, to try to increase their motivation by discussing the future and the exciting things that can come, to search out and find a living situation that they would be okay or interested in moving into, to consider what areas of interest and they have and what jobs exist in those areas, and consider what sort of motivation, incentive, or circumstances would help to increase their interest in working. And some key things to consider when looking at the potential supports around employment are: what type of volunteer or vocational experiences has your child had, if any? Often the school district has some things that they've done related to this. In what environment, type of job, etc., can you see your child succeeding in? How close in terms of months or years do you think your child is to being able to enter such an environment? And what type of support or help would allow your child to progress during those months or years needed to prepare? I think these are some questions to have in your mind, as we go through this presentation. So now we're going to go over the landscape for job-related services. So I thought it was important to provide everyone with an overview, because I've always found when people are seeking out services, it just seems like a maze, and you get information in bits and pieces, and it's very confusing to just track like what's out there and what's possible and what makes sense. And again, this isn't all inclusive. There are some options, newer options that you may hear about, that you should pursue. Don't think this is everything, but these are the options that I've seen people most often doing and involved in, and so it's what I wanted to talk about. So the potential non-residential services that are work-related after leaving the school district, for regional center clients, these would be day programs, and some day programs have a vocational component. Depending on the day program, some day programs have a pretty strong vocational component, some day programs have a more minimal vocational component, and some don't have any. Individualized day program, and this includes TDS, which we'll discuss later, but individualized day programs are another, can be another option. And then there's the Department of Rehabilitation. Now, the Department of Rehabilitation is another state agency, very similar to the regional center. It serves a different population. It's for individuals with any disability. So it's available for both regional center clients, are like automatically kind of eligible for Department of Rehabilitation services, and individuals with non-regional center qualifying disabilities. And the main services that they offer are work training, which lasts like up to 4 months, a job development, which is like job search related services, and then job coaching, which lasts up to about 3 to 4 months after getting a job. And another regional center service is kind of a long-term job coaching service called Habilitation. Okay. So I have some flow charts, and how to read these are the green rectangles there. They are a point of growth or a step forward. The yellow rectangles are decision points. So they'll always have a yes or no after them that lead in different directions. And then the red rectangles are stopping points. So these are points where, as far as I'm aware, there are not further supports that would encourage additional advancement or growth. So there are some abbreviations in the flow charts. So RC stands for Regional Center. And just, probably everybody knows this, but those are living, residential, and vocational and other supports for individuals with developmental disabilities. Then Department of Rehabilitation, the abbreviation is DOR. And those are vocational supports for individuals with any type of disability that has a negative impact on the ability to find or keep employment. So just like someone with generalized anxiety disorder that loses a job over it, like 2 times in a row, could often qualify for DOR services. And not noted in the flowcharts is that most vendors, and vendors are agencies that are paid by the regional center or paid by Department of Rehabilitation. Then you're a vendor of the regional center, or you're a vendor of the Department of Rehabilitation. Most agencies do provide an option that these services can be privately paid for. So that's important to remember. Okay, so if TDS is not in the picture, this is a typical flowchart process. So, and can everyone see the arrow that's there? Arrow, yeah, okay, that's kind of moving. Okay, so, and the starting point doesn't have to be leaving the school district. The starting point could just be, at a point where you're interested, say, in working or changing things up. But so here you have the starting point. And so let's say you're interested in working, right off, interested in working. So yes, you are interested in working. So the route typically for people interested in working has always been to apply to Department of Rehabilitation for services, okay? So you're accepted in DOR, and now you're receiving services. That process takes a couple of months. And now the question is, are you work ready? So if you're ready right away to get a job, if the answer is yes, you can go into job development services, and you get set up with an agency, and they help you find work. And typically the work that you're going to be looking for and finding is going to be an entry-level job. So if you're all ready, you look for work, you find an entry-level job, and then you can receive job coaching for a couple of months to get help set up in the job. And then once a few months pass, you're considered successful and placed, and DOR sort of is gone from the picture. If you are a client of Regional Center at that time, you can get some long-term job coaching to help you stay in the job. So now let's say you apply for DOR services, you receive them, but you're not considered to be work ready. In this case, the answer is no, and you can do a job training. DOR has contracted with agencies like ICS and other agencies to provide job training sites. Some of them are retail work environments or clerical environments, a variety of businesses. So you can receive job training, which lasts typically a total of 4 months. And if at the end of those 4 months, a report is written about whether you're considered to be work ready. So here it happens again. You've done job training. Now are you work ready? If the answer is yes, you can go into job development services and hopefully get an entry-level job. If at this point you are not considered work ready, so you can't really go into job development, it wouldn't make sense. Now, your options, if you're with the regional center, your option basically is to go back here and join a day program. That's a very cute dog. Okay, so if when you leave the school district, or when you're considering things, if you're not interested in working, so the answer is no, the typical process people do is they join a day program, right? So, or an individualized day program. That's what IDP is here, an individualized day program. Now, within the day program, some day programs do have a work component. So sometimes a day program, well, I'll describe those more in depth in a minute. So if there is a work component, yes, there is an opportunity to gain some work skills at a day program. Now, some day programs actually have a setup where there is some real sort of more competitive type of paid work through the day program. And in that case, if that's the route you go and you do this paid work through the day program, yes, you can get an entry level, what I'm calling an entry level set aside job. So what that means is that day program has an agreement with the place of business that they can supply like one person who's going to work there from their day program, you know, one or two people. So you can get that entry level set aside job. If there is no paid work like that through the day program, so if the answer is no, you could continue in the day program and continue to kind of gain some minimal work skills based on the kind of based on some of the work that they have available. And I'll describe what some of those things look like. Now, if at the day program there's no work component, there's really no route to gain work skills. Usually the day program is going to be like art-based, maybe, things like that. And there may not be a route to gain any work skills. So the options that I just described that are supported by Regional Center are like day programs with a vocational component. So I've never worked in a day program, but many of the clients I've worked with over the years at Lifehouse and at ICS have been in different day programs, and I visited them and I've talked with them about the programs. So generally I'm familiar with all of the programs going on in Marin County. So here are some features of day programs and some examples of potential vocational components. So day programs are normally, they run 9 to 3 p.m. on weekdays. They can support work in small groups for 1 to 2 hours a few days a week. So there's some day programs that have small groups that will go and work for 1 to 2 hours a few days a week at different retail sites. I've seen this rolling silverware at a restaurant before through a day program, folding clothes at a retail store, or being on a cleaning crew. And the person is not hired by the business. There's just an agreement with the day program that people are allowed to come in and do some work. And it's all supervised by the day program. It's a good kind of intro into getting some work, getting a little bit of work experience. Day programs also can produce something that is sold or provide a service. So some day programs have like a dog walking service. And so individuals can participate in that. They can walk dogs and they'll be paid, a small amount of money for that work. Sometimes day programs have like a production work, like they create a product of some kind, and people can go and do that work for a couple hours a day. Day programs can also employ clients to work in their kitchens or perform various duties, like there's a program, Cedars Textile Arts Center in Marin, and people are able to do janitorial work or some farm work or some work in the kitchen as a part of that day program. And then some day programs have agreements with certain workplaces to provide workers for longer shifts and more days of work. And these are the most like kind of what you would call like real world type of employment. So like the day program called TDS has like, I've seen people through TDS like work in a kitchen at Autodesk, for example. someone got an entry-level job there, and that was through the day program. Someone else was working at Woodlands Market. PDS is a very like robust job program compared to other day programs. And day program support does not exceed 30 hours per week, and most of the day programs do not support more than 2 to 8 hours of work per week, unless if they're like PDS, where they have these arrangements with employers. Well, what's like a potential upside of a day program with a vocational component? Well, it provides a lot of structure. So like 30 plus hours per week if you include transportation. Of course, with COVID and shelter in place, those programs are not functioning in the same way they once were. The day programs provide a lot of potential peer interaction. So there's a whole group of people that an individual in a day program gets exposed to, a potential friend group. There are a range of activities usually offered. So there can be classes, socialization groups, sometimes art, sometimes vocational groups. Some day programs have people take classes at College of Marin. So they can be pretty flexible. Shifts can be very short, like even under 2 hours, and the job situations are low risk. What I mean is that it's not like a job where if you don't perform well, you will be fired and it will be kind of an intense experience. It's a fairly gentle experience. If it's not working out for you, it's just discussed within your day program. Maybe it's not the best thing for you, and these are the expectations and that kind of thing. So, it's lower risk. Some of the potential downsides of these programs are, well, it can be too much structure. I mean, basically, if you go right into a day program that's 30 plus, hours per week from school, you're basically replacing school with the day program. So it can be too much structure. If the peers in the program don't seem to be a good match, then the peer interaction is not really going to be a positive of the program. There can be, even though there are a range of activities, there can still be limited choices in the range of activities. So it's kind of like a set menu of things you could do, but there might just be a couple of options. So if you wanted something particularly different, there might be no route for that. The job situations themselves may not really be strong on the work training component, so skill building can be pretty limited. And again, typically the vocational component doesn't really resemble real world experience, though there are definitely exceptions to that. And the best way to learn about these day programs is to take a tour of them if you can, and see what they have to offer, and talk to some parents whose children are in the programs, and talk to some clients who are in the programs. Well, another option that you can request from a regional center social worker is an individualized day program. Usually you have to kind of have an argument that no day programs are a good match, and then you would request an individualized day program. So it's a one-to-one service, and it can be up to 30 hours a week. So it can completely replace a day program. Some rules around that are you cannot be in an individualized day program a few days a week, and at a day program 1 or more days a week. And just in general, day programs are all different. Some require, if you're in their program, you have to come 5 days a week. Other day programs allow you to come 1 or 2 days. And in that case, I had seen people in the past who did a split program. They did a program one place 3 days a week and one place 2 days a week. And that was, not a bad setup for some people, but not every day program accepts that. But if the regional center justifies that you need an individualized day program for your goals to be met, they will not allow you then to be in a group day program. So that's just important thing to remember. The potential upsides of an individualized day program is that it provides a lot of one-to-one support. If it's hard to get along well with others, or if being in a group setting causes a lot of anxiety, or of course now with the current situation with COVID, an individualized day program can be a good option. And it's wide open in terms of creating a schedule. And this is a strength and a weakness because if you get an agency to support you with an individualized day program, often there is no schedule. There's just a person who's coming 30 hours a week. So again, it is wide open, and this could mean you get support at a volunteer site or possibly a job site. And again, if there is a vocational component where you're getting some one-to-one support, again, it's normally low risk, and it's not going to be kind of similar to, getting a job, getting a typical job. It's going to be supervised quite intensely. Well, some potential downsides are, from what I've seen, like that amount of one-to-one support can actually lend itself to some pretty unproductive activity. It's just a long shift, 6 hours straight with the same person. A lot of times agencies will hire one person to do the work. So it's like the same person every day, 6 hours a day. It doesn't make for efficient or targeted work, really. It provides no peer interaction. Typically, it's hard to get peer interaction through a program like this. And then often as a parent, you just need to be really self-directed in creating any kind of a consistent, beneficial program. So either the person getting the service or their parent has to pursue opportunities for like volunteer or potentially jobs. Sometimes as a parent, someone that has an agency where your child could volunteer in, or a place where they could do a little bit of work. And so an individualized day program might make sense to set up. But, you're going to have to be setting things up, probably setting up the schedule, and it's a lot of legwork, typically. Okay. So, and that is kind of this side of the equation, the joining the day program side. Over there. That's what we've been talking about. So now I'll just give some information on non-regional center services, which are these Department of Rehabilitation services. So, the Department of Rehabilitation has some agreements with schools, so you may have had some kind of involvement with them through the schools currently. So the Department of Rehabilitation is open to anyone who has a disability that would or does interfere with work performance. And they provide a variety of vocational services mostly through vendor agencies like ICS or others. So a work training that can last up to 4 months, job development, which is resume writing, finding appropriate jobs, a job search, interview support, and then job coaching for 3 to 4 months after finding a job. Those are some of the main services Department of Rehab offers. There are some other services as well that I don't know as much about. So I just wanted to go into a little more depth about each of these programs individually, so everyone can understand sort of what they offer and some of their intrinsic limitations. So work training, it usually starts with a trial period of 40 hours over a month or so to see if a longer work training makes sense. So let's say you're interested in retail work and an agency has a work training site at a retail store like Old Navy or Marshall's. You would go there and you would work a total of 40 hours over a month there to see if you seem to be engaged in the work, if it seemed like it would make sense to advance to a work training. If the person does like the work and is interested, and it seems like there's enough focus that a work training would make sense, then there's a training period of about 3 months. Services are provided one-to-one, and at the end of the period, a report is written, which has to do with how employable is this person? Because the Department of Rehab's mission is to help people become employable, right? So if the person seems employable, then a recommendation is made for the person to go into job development. And in job development, a person usually meets with a job developer once a week to discuss potential jobs, get some help preparing a resume, do some interview prep, how you want to show up for an interview. They'll practice, and then they'll do help with a job search and setting up interviews. and they'll help deal with follow-up, like rejections from jobs, maybe why a person was rejected, and job offers, dealing with job offers, and things like that. And then if a person succeeds in being placed, that's the expression. So you find a job, you're placed sort of in a job, then you would get coaching through the Department of Rehabilitation. And the coaching is in a model where there's someone with you to help you complete the job training process. Typically for the first month, like 100% of the time, all the work you do, there's somebody there with you providing coaching. And then it tapers down over the second and the third month with the idea that the workplace is going to learn a little bit about the difficulties or where you might need more help, and they'll be able to take over being a good manager, a good boss, of you. But usually you're considered successfully placed by like the fourth month, and services stop from DOR. If the person is with the regional center, then you can get long-term coaching, which is called habilitation. And that long-term coaching, like if you work 20 hours, it would be usually like 4 hours a month. You would get support on the job for help. Sometimes regional center will make exceptions and a person can get more job coaching than that. But that's kind of the standard rules. In the case of someone without regional center services, who got this 4 months of job coaching and then it ended, like at ICS, and I think other agencies that provide services for DOR do this, but I know that we do. We provide something called permanent follow-up services, which is we still continue to check in with this person who got this job, like once or twice a month, how's it going? And if they're running into some major problems, we'll try and do a few things to help them, retain their job. It's not a paid service, it's just important to help people stay in their jobs. But again, people with regional center get this ongoing job support. So what are some upsides to the Department of Rehabilitation? Well, it's much easier to qualify for services than regional center. Like I don't even know if I've ever heard about someone appealing with DOR to get services. So it's easier to get services. I know that the idea of a time-limited service can seem like a real downside, but there's actually like a significant upside, and that's because they're time-limited, they tend to be more efficiently provided. So, if you're only getting 3 months of work training, you really have to make sure the person is getting as much support as possible to learn some job skills. And it's time limited, so there's a little more urgency to it, and that can be helpful. And then with the coaching, the coach knows, well, I'm here 100% of the time now, but in a couple months, I'm not going to be here anymore. So I better make sure that the person I'm working with is able to succeed in this workplace. So that helps too. And usually agencies that work with DOR have experience with a very wide range of skill levels and disabilities and job opportunities. So that can be helpful. Agencies that work with DOR really have expertise in the job field and in vocational skill development. So some potential downsides of DOR are they tend to be slower and less responsive than regional centers, in my experience. They have less providers of services. So in Marin, there are probably, I don't even know how many agencies that work with the regional center, maybe 20 or 25 maybe. The number of agencies that work with DOR, I believe, is like 3. There's less options. And I've heard that it's that way in other counties too. I'm not sure. Because the services are time limited, they're really best suited for someone who will be ready to work like within 6 months. If it's a longer horizon to become work ready, these services are not necessarily appropriate. Also, in our experience, like once a single work training has been provided, other work trainings typically are not offered. They're always worth trying, but I mean, it's always worth trying asking a social worker at an agency if you can get another service. But in our experience, once someone's completed a work training, they're kind of like, well, you've done a work training now. So that's done. And there's at least a waiting period of a year or more before you could try and come back and get like another work training experience. And also, if someone has been employed at an entry-level job, we've had instances of people who were employed like at Safeway, and they decided they wanted to do a different type of work, and DOR was not open to providing additional services in that case. They said, well, this person's been through our process. They are employed, so we don't do any more than that. Okay, so that's this side of the equation, and that's kind of why I was saying, if you go through the DOR process and end up with an entry-level job, that's sort of the ending point typically. So some of the problems with these options, as I've mentioned, is there's a lot of gaps in these services. So day programs are not suitable for everyone and often do not promote growth in terms of job readiness or increased independence. So that's an issue with day programs. Individualized day programs rarely are organized or well thought out enough to create strong outcomes for people around employment. They could be. It's not to say they couldn't be, but I haven't seen it very often that they are. So those programs tend to not generate, like they don't build towards someone becoming ready for employment, in my experience, too well. DOR programs, meanwhile, are short-term, so the entire process typically is finished in under a year, and sometimes in under 6 months. So, these programs are really set up, like I said before, for someone who's ready to be employed, certainly like within the year. They're ready to start working. So if someone needs 1 to 3 years to become work ready, for example, these are not really good options that can provide like consistent forward progress at a good pace. And it's what we found, and we used to talk about a lot before we had this TDS vendorization. What we noted was there was a group of people who just needed much more support to become ready to have a job. We would be talking about this person. We would say, well, we feel like they might be ready to have a job. Then they would do a work training for 4 months. At the end of it, they wouldn't be ready to have a job. They needed more time, but we didn't really have a good option for them. There is a second group of people that we found who are people who had been working at an entry-level job for a couple of years, but they really wanted to move into a different job. So maybe they wanted to become a stocker at a grocery store instead of a bagger, right? They wanted to work they wanted to do the register or work in the deli, but they were going to need more support and training for a period to be able to transition to that job. So that was another group that there really wasn't any kind of setup to get support in. There were also people who did not know if employment would work, and they needed some kind of exploratory process to maybe be exposed to a bunch of different environments and to work on building very basic skills like focus and attention and things like that. So this was another group that was really, there was no way to serve them. And there are also people who are much more likely to succeed in some sort of non-traditional work environment, which could be like some people want to try to build like a micro enterprise, like a dog walking business, or they want to build a photography-based business where they're going to sell things online. And again, DOR doesn't really support that type of thing. And you'd end up supporting it like through your SLS program or something, which isn't really set up to support a vocational thing like a micro enterprise. And lastly, there's a group of people that was interested in having like a college type of experience and getting support at a community college to take some courses and do some things like that. So all of these groups, really, we didn't feel like we're adequately served by the options that were available. And so something that ended up happening was we were looking into other potential options for services. We found this TDS service and we thought it might work. And then someone from the regional center came and asked us if we would have this vendorization and provide the service, because the regional center has an employment initiative around helping get more clients at the regional center to have the opportunity for competitive employment. And so we started providing this tailored day service option in 2018. But again, it had been around as a possibility for a while. We just didn't really understand it, and the regional center in Marin wasn't sort of looking for vendors to do it until more recently. So what is tailored day services? It's a special form of individualized day program. And it's up to 8 hours a week. So that's an important limitation to know. You can't get more than 8 hours of, well, you could get more than 8 hours per week, but you can't get more than 34 hours per month, which averages about 8 hours per week. And what these are is they're targeted pre-vocational services that support an individual to explore interest and see how they could relate to future work, find volunteer and educational opportunities and provide support in them, identify weak areas like maybe focus or work appropriate behavior or stamina, and work to strengthen those areas so a person can over time be more likely able to succeed in employment. We can also provide support while taking academic or non-academic courses, and develop transportation skills as well as a part of TDS service. We also are able to provide vocational supports like resume writing, job search, and job selection support, and other exploratory kind of job development processes to see what field of work or type of job might be best for someone. And we can provide also job coaching type support as well through a TDS plan. Now, other agencies that do TDS services may have a little bit of a different scope of what they do, but it's all going to be generally similar to these geared towards kind of eventual job readiness. Okay. So some of the upside to tailored day services are, again, it's a limited amount of targeted services per week. So it's a little easier to have people who specialize. Like, for example, we have a worker who did graphic arts and graphic art design. And so she can help people if they want to try to do a micro enterprise and have a little bit of their own business. Like, she's a good person to help with that. We have other people who've been College of Marin students and they've taken a lot of classes there. And so these people are great to provide support for people taking courses at College of Marin because they're very familiar with the courses. So because it's more targeted, it's easier to get kind of more effective work done. So another potential upside is the support that can be provided at a local community college or at volunteer sites is really in whatever area interests the person the most. So there's, a lot of choice there. A TDS program can be geared towards eventual independent employment in the community. So it can be very much aiming towards that, but over like a long time horizon, like 3 years, 5 years, 2 years. Once a TDS plan can simultaneously, like someone could be volunteering, trying to gain work skills while at the same time be looking for a job and getting some job development services. And if they do become employed and the TDS number of hours is enough, they could get some on-the-job support and still be being supported while they're taking classes or doing other things. And a critical feature is it's not a time-limited service. So again, someone could try to build employment skills over a few years. And that's what it takes for some people to develop, these skills. So the potential downside are that if a lot of supervised time is required for a person, 8 hours per week is typically not going to be enough support. And it's not possible to have TDS hours in any other day program services. So just like an individualized day program works, if you have a TDS plan, you cannot kind of participate in a typical day program as well. And another potential downside is it does, provides very limited, if any, peer interaction. So, if a person's taking classes at College of Marin, there's going to be some peer interaction there. Or is it a volunteer site? There could be some peer interaction there. But unlike a day program where peer interaction is built in, that's not really happening with TDS services. So now we look at this flow chart again with TDS as an option. You can see there's a lot more green. There's a lot more opportunities. So if we start here with leaving the district, right? So the first question, just like before, would be, are you interested in working right now? And if so, yes, you can go right into the DOR track. But what you notice is that there aren't the same kind of stopping points. So if, a person applies to DOR services, is not work ready, they do job training for 4 months, and they're still not, answer still no, now they could request a TDS plan where they're going to continue to get support to develop job skills in college, and it can go on for a long time. So it's much slower. The support is able to be provided over a much longer time period. At the same time, if a person is ready for work and they go through the process, they go through job development, they start working at an entry-level job, and then at some point down the line, they're interested in advancement or changing fields. They're bored. They don't want to be a courtesy clerk, for example, anymore. And now, they're interested in doing something else. Again, it's not a stopping point. You can request a TDS plan and get some support to try to develop some new job skills and get a new job. Now, also, it creates a less of a binary equation between are you interested in working now or not. So if you're not interested in working now, for example, or if someone's not ready to work now, the answer is no, but they are interested in working in, say, like 1 to 3 years, right? Then a great thing to do is to request a TDS plan and to create a plan to get support in college, maybe volunteering, and some skill development areas. And then you're not on a short timeline, but let's say then after 18 months, you feel like you're work ready. Yes. Then you can move in and still with the same vendorization, right? Having this TDS plan, you can change the focus and you can get job development services. So you could continue, say, meeting 7 hours a week to develop work skills, and 1 hour a week you could devote to job development, looking for work, finding a job. And then if you get a job, you could start an entry-level job, and you can go through that process. Now, at the same time, let's say something else that we've seen is someone needs more time and they get more time and now they are work ready. Well, at that point, if you're work ready, instead of doing the job development through TDS, at that point, you could go and apply for DOR services and go through the normal work training process that DOR has set up. And now, let's say now you've had 2 years of preparing, building up to be able to work, now to go through a 6 or 8 month process in which at the end of which you'll have a job could be reasonable now. It might make sense. So, that's really this additional option that TDS provides. Now, let's say it doesn't seem like, your child is interested in working in 1 to 3 years. It's further out. So let's say, okay, then, you join a day program And let's say the day program has like a small work component. So, and your child takes part in that. Now they're doing that, and they like working, right? And that seems to be going well, and they're starting to gain work skills. Now, at any point, they could leave the day program. Now, they would have to leave the day program, so that's hard. That is one thing that is difficult. But if they feel like they've gotten, and I've seen this before, people feel like they've sort of outgrown the day program, they feel bored with it, they've sort of got all they could out of it. At this point, you can request a TDS plan and get this type of support until you are work ready, and then can go like into the DOR process. Or if the work program has if the day program has a stronger work component, and you are able to successfully find an entry-level set-aside job, once again, if that job eventually becomes, boring or stale, and there's an interest in advancement or changing fields, it's a possibility to do that through a TDS plan. And again, you do have to exit out of the day program to do that. But so you can see it's a much more kind of robust, there's just a lot more, there's a lot more options for support with TDS being available. Let's see. So I wanted to give a couple of examples, and they're sort of combined between different people, so they're not describing particular individuals, but they're sort of an amalgam. We had a young woman interested in attending cosmetology school. So she went through DOR programs, was successfully working part-time. She moved into working full-time and had some family support to attend cosmetology school. And with a TDS plan, she was still able to get some job coaching, and she got help around a study plan for passing like a state exam. Because while she has very good abilities in art and like artistic makeup and things like that, it's the exam that's the thing really that she'll need a lot of support on. Because she was already gainfully employed, we do not believe she would have qualified for additional DOR services, nor would they have really been helpful, because to practice for this exam, she needs a couple years of steady work and memorization, etc., for her to have a chance to pass the exam. And hopefully, that would be a possibility. But before, there really wouldn't have been any option for support for her. So another example is we had a young man who was benefiting from long-term work training. So this is a young man. We have a gardening work training program called GEM at ICS. So we had a young man who was in this training. And basically, this is not someone who would have been work ready in 3 to 4 months. So instead of coming in through DOR programs and getting a work training, he came in through a TDS plan and was at the GEM program 8 hours a week. And it took him a long time to even start talking in the program, to even start interacting with people. But he got used to the environment over a year. He became increasingly comfortable. And in his special skill area, which is around data recording and doing computer work, working on newsletters and things like that, we were able to see where he could make a contribution. And he became comfortable enough as part of the team and able to contribute enough that he was hired very part-time and continued to receive on-the-job support. And that was an example of someone that if he had just gone through the regular DOR work training, he wouldn't have never acclimated to the workplace in 4 months, and it would have just ended as an unsuccessful work training, and that would have been sort of the end of that for him. We had another young man who had some potential clerical skills. So this is a young man considering what type of work he might have a propensity for. He's pretty good with computers and interested in that. He did have some difficulty in his people skills. And his family helped him get a job opportunity in like a clerical mailroom type of environment. It was like a temporary job. And then we found a data entry volunteer opportunity. So this person went to this work and they had a TDS plan. So they got support in this work site by us with this job coaching. Then they got supported this volunteer opportunity doing this data entry. They learned that process. And that support lasted for about a year through TDS in both areas. Then the clerical job ended and the volunteer opportunity sort of had ceased to be an area where there was more growth. And so we found some data entry work at a clerical work training site that we had access to. So it was an office space. And so he did that for another 6 months. And in that work, he did some updating of forms, some changing of forms and making them uniform. And he did some data entry, checking to see if all customers were like in the system. So it was helpful for the work site because they got free work. It was volunteering. And it was helpful for him because he gained additional work skills. So he was able to build multiple skills. And then us as an agency, we were able to understand things about the work environment that he could succeed in easily and things that were harder for him. And so we had a much better sense for eventual job placement, like what environments and duties he might be able to do very well and what things it was best if they weren't a part of the job description. And that can take a long time to get to know that and to get there. So we had another situation with a young woman who's already working, and she was interested in developing a micro enterprise. So she's working at a job that was a job, and she likes to make the money in the job, etc. But it's not like a super engaging job for her, not like a a life love kind of job. But this young woman, she takes nice photos. And the idea is to use that to just spend a couple hours a week to try to develop some products based on these photos, things like placemats or shirts, all types of products. But it's a real area of interest for this person. And she can develop a variety of skills in doing this. So it could just turn out to be a hobby that costs, her money, but that she enjoys. It could also turn into a hobby that pays for itself. Photography can be a little bit of an expensive hobby sometimes, etc. Or it could turn into a minimally profitable or maybe a more profitable business. That's a possibility because it's a real love of hers to do this, and you never know. So this type of support is possible through a TDS plan as well. And last, and this is probably one of the more common types of TDS plans that we have, is a young woman who is interested at both taking some courses while looking for work. And in general, almost any college course, like community college level course, can be considered a form of work preparation because you have to focus, you have to organize your time. There's a lot of skills that you need to have to succeed that also are needed in the workplace. So we were able to help her pick courses at COM, and I remember at one point, she had an interest in like a small business course, and we thought it might be reasonable, and we looked at it, and it was like it was about like theory of small business and marketing, and we just explained, like, we don't have someone who could explain this to you because we don't have anyone who understands these things because we're not business people here. So we were able to steer her towards courses that were more suited for her. And basically there, it can be attending a class with a person. And usually we initially will attend the first couple of classes just to get a feel for the course and how the person we're working with is understanding it. And then it's determining, like, maybe we don't have to be in the course all the time, or maybe we do, it just depends. But it could then be meeting separately. And what are your assignments for the week? Do you understand them? Looking over the assignments, helping hook up with other sources of support, like tutors or other things intrinsic to community colleges, that they have through their student accessibility services departments, and things like that. But we do have quite a number of people who are taking College of Marine courses through a TDS plan right now. and with the flexibility of the plan, we also continued to work with her about potential jobs. And a lot of this process with this individual was just kind of making sure that she understood that there was value in an entry-level job, even if it wasn't in an area that she was really wanted to work in, because first you have to build some basic work skills. And also for her to understand that the area that she really loves is not an area that has lots of jobs, which can be the case sometimes. And that was a long process of meeting and talking about what's out there and looking at all the potential jobs to get her to understand that we weren't trying to put limits on her life dreams. We're just trying to help her understand what's truly out there and available for people. So overall, we help this individual do courses, have a college experience while also moving forward on her vocational goals. And we're able to do that for an extended period of time. So this is an example of a plan of support for academic courses. And this, I don't have the whole plan here, but what I do have is this is like a goal around being organized to complete coursework. So the goal is I want to succeed in my classes at College of Marin. So the second objective in this goal, there's I think 3 objectives, is I will practice setting up a weekly task list for my coursework with 75% accuracy by January 31st, 2021. So the TDS instructor will help the client set up a task list on a weekly basis by reading over the syllabus to find when tests and larger assignments are due, creating a long-term study plan, reading over the weekly assignments, creating a weekly study schedule, helping her learn methods to estimate how much time and work assignments might take, organizing notes, keeping up with iPhone calendar, setting due dates for assignments, and upcoming exams. So this was for the organizational piece of taking a college course. And there were other objectives around understanding the coursework and reaching out for additional help from the instructor and things like that in there as well for her. Then an example of a common job development plan. I wanted to provide this as well. So often the person's goal would be, I want to get a job that I enjoy more than my current job and is more likely to become a career. So that's something, that I talked about, right? Where someone's already been working, but they want to move into a different area. So in this case, I will meet with a job developer at least one time weekly with 90% accuracy in order to look for job opportunities. So the TDS instructor will provide the following here: help the client gain a better understanding of the job market, teach and assist client on how to find jobs, consider what is the best support structure for a client at a potential workplace. This just refers to some of the, sometimes it's better for a person to volunteer to start off. Sometimes it's good to go a work training route. Sometimes it's good to look for a paid internship. There's a thing called a paid internship program. So this is the process where, because at ICS and other agencies that do a lot of employment services will have this too, because they understand the range of possibilities, that can be a part of the process too. Is as the person's looking for work, we're thinking, what's the best support structure here? Where on the flow chart, should this go? Discuss with potential employers the options. So also the job developer will be contacting employers and talking about hey, we have someone who has these skills. What do you think? Do you think this would work in your workplace, et cetera? Teach and assist how to apply for jobs, provide interview skills training, attend interviews with the client, and provide onboarding support with new hire paperwork once the client finds a job. Okay. Well, in summary, working can be an important step on the road to increased independence. It's often helpful to be thoughtful and intentional about the process of building job skills and finding a work environment in which success is possible. A key thing to consider is what environment will move things forward at a pace that seems to make sense. And for that, it's important to understand the options available and find one that matches your situation as best as possible. So just generally speaking, when much structure and or supervision is needed, day programs or an individualized day program is likely the best option. And looking for some type of vocational component can help to continue to move things forward for eventual work if that's a goal. When less structure would work, but building work skills seems like a 1 to 3 year process, a TDS plan is something definitely to consider because it can include work training, skills training, training at volunteer sites, academic courses, transportation training, and a few other supports. And when less structure would work and building work skills would take less than 1 year, a TDS plan or DOR services are both probably good options to consider. And if someone's ready to work in less than 6 months, DOR services often can be the best option. And then, so, if you ever have a question about kind of understanding and like some stuff about regional center services, and maybe you're having trouble hooking up with a social worker for answers or things like that, you can always contact me, and I'm glad to spend some time speaking about it. And that's my contact information for that. And, if you're interested in, therapy with someone who understands, you know, disabilities and issues, or your child, is interested in therapy, I'm available for that too, and it can be reached through my email at Seeds of Awareness, which is based in Petaluma, but everything's being done over Zoom right now, so it's not bound by county. And we do accept Medi-Cal and like sliding scale fee for our work. So